I
Awesome.
love the lady who tells us.
She's cool. But yeah, thanks for joining today, Sanaa, to tell us all about your recent experience of going from a content writer to content editor for Juro, B2B tech startup. So yeah, I thought it would be really good to hear your experiences and any tips that you have for anyone else that's wanting to get promoted to a similar position as you. So I guess a good place to start would be, what is your new role as content editor? What is it that you were doing, and what was in a short summary, your journey to get there?
So I joined Juro as a content writer, and I think initially I was meant to be writing for a few channels. So it was like I was meant to be writing the newsletter once every 2 weeks. I was meant to be writing on the blog twice a week. I was meant to be dealing with social media, and like a few other small things here and there. Like if we were writing any sort of ebooks, I was responsible for writing like a few chapters in there and things like that. And then slowly through my time at Juro, it became more of just sort of owning more of those channels and just taking on more of that responsibility. So instead of just writing a chapter or two for an ebook, I was writing the majority of the ebook. Instead of still posting on the blog as regularly as I did, but on top of that, doing guest posts as well on like other blogs, and like sort of focusing more on like SEO and how to sort of build that into our work. Instead of just writing the newsletter, we also started our community of we built a community for scale up lawyers. So there's about 260 in the Slack channel, and for them we do a weekly newsletter, so it's a separate sort of thing which I'm also responsible for. And so it's basically just my journey from being content writer to content editor just involved sort of taking on more of that work.
And was this a conscious effort? Were you like deliberately trying to get involved in more different areas and to the community in order to then ask for a promotion? How did that happen?
So I think, I was lucky enough in that at Juro, like career progression is something which we talk about regularly. So it was more a case of ideally, I want to see myself here. How do I get there? And these are the steps I need to take over the next quarter to sort of improve myself. And naturally, like when you're working at a small company, you end up doing more than you initially signed up for. Like, I am a writer, but I knew that working at a scale up, there's only 2 people in the content team right now. I will end up doing more than just, what I initially thought I would be doing. So I guess there's like an element of knowing that, knowing what I need to be doing in order to get that promotion, but then also sort of developing a natural sort of curiosity to learn more and to do more, because you can't just sort of sit in your corner at a startup anyway.
Yeah. So you weren't waiting, you were just looking for opportunities to get involved in different projects.
Yeah, absolutely. So even, for example, one that springs to mind is when we do our ebooks, a lot of that involves like ghost writing chapters. And I get pretty sort of, I fall into a rhythm of doing that after, you get enough practice of it that you sort of know what the process is and you know how you're supposed to write for other people. But then for one of the ebooks, I was supposed to ghostwrite an introduction, and I was like, I have no idea how to do this. Like, it's a completely different format to the chapters themselves. It's meant to be more like anecdotal, and I was like, how do you ghostwrite someone else's anecdotes? So after trying, it was a case of reaching out to my manager Tom, but also to like any mentors that I have, and just being like, teach me how to do this, like help me upskill so I get better at this. Because obviously I need to be better at this if I'm taking on more work sort of in the future. So sort of seeking out those kind of opportunities to develop as well, for sure.
Yeah. And did you feel that you were in a safe space where you could just keep asking for help and didn't feel like you had to pretend you know it all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I like demand it.
Yeah.
I'll be yeah, I guess it really just depends. I mean, the environment in which your learning and development environment is so important, right? Like if there's a safe space for you to be able to say, I know this is a weakness, please help me get better at it, and you know that the company's going to accommodate you and try their best to sort of improve that, it's amazing. It's like, it's so make or break. Like I've definitely in the past worked at places where it's kind of, you have to kind of work it out yourself, and you don't get that support, and it makes such a huge difference to your sort of mindset at work, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a really good structure at Juro to support you in your goals. What does that look like? So from when you were a writer, what was the relationship like with your boss in terms of helping you with your career, and how far advanced was that from when you want, your idea of becoming promoted to actually doing so?
So what do you mean, like the relationship between me
I
and
guess,
my manager and how that's developed, or?
yeah, I guess like what's the structure that they've got in place to support people with a goal and to support your career development? What did that look like in terms of your, I guess, a plan to help you get to where you want to get to?
So there's like regular check-ins that we have to make sure we're aligned on where I need to be. There's also, I mean, we have like one-to-ones every week. So if there's anything which I feel like I'm struggling in, or if there's a project we've just launched and I want to get feedback on it, or I'm aware that there's something in that project I struggled with, I will bring it up in one-to-ones. But then we have career development sessions every quarter as well. So it's a continual sort of um, cycle to help you grow. Like it's not sort of like a one-time thing and then it's done. But then also there's like there's a big element of transparency in there as well. So a few days ago, someone from our customer success team, for example, posted about how they were having like a feedback call with a customer, and they were just like, anyone who wants to join and see how that happens, like you're more than welcome to. And it's sort of just being open to sharing that knowledge and open to helping others, which I think makes a huge difference. Like I know there's some aspects of the more data driven side of marketing that I struggle with, and by raising that and being able to raise that in sort of like, an open environment, like I know that there's people in the team um, who my manager will schedule training sessions with, who can help me develop in that. So it's like it's a continuous thing, and there's no sort of set time for it. It's really just like, if I feel like there's something I need to work on, I will flag it like whenever I can, because obviously I can't afford to be left behind in a company when we're growing so fast and we have such big ideas for content and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like you were really proactive in where you've seen skill gaps like the data driven side, and you've gone out your way to try and get upskilled in that area, as well as the career development sessions that they were giving you. That sounds like a nice mix.
Yeah, I think I don't think I used to be as I think it's definitely also facilitated by the workplace. Like I've never been in a working environment where I felt like I could be really open about this stuff, and it just makes such a huge difference. Like the culture and like the people you work with every day, being able to just talk to them honestly just has such a huge impact. So yeah, I think it wasn't something that came naturally to me. I always love asking for feedback, and I always do, like regularly, but when it comes to admitting that you're not good at something and like asking for help with it, that's something that has sort of been nurtured in me, I guess, at Juro.
Yeah, that's a really good trait to have. And it's scary to be open to getting
Yeah,
feedback and admitting where you're finding things hard, but that's
for sure.
a big part of growth. And
Yeah.
I'm interested in whether you felt any imposter syndrome through getting thrown into the deep end with things at a startup and being able to go into a higher role. Was there parts of your brain that just thought, oh, I haven't got enough experience for this, I'm not good enough for that? And if so, how did you tackle imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I mean, I battle imposter syndrome regularly. So yeah, I think there comes a point where you just kind of have to put it aside. Like I mean, I'm not getting promoted. Like, I wouldn't be getting promoted if my manager and if the CEO and if the leadership team didn't think I was up for it. And so you have to kind of accept the fact that your brain's going to just try and make some noise to sort of try and distract you from what you can do. And also what really helped was I went back and looked at sort of, my notes from when I first joined. Be that a to-do list or be that like my OKRs, like my um like our objectives from like the very first quarter when I joined, and to see how much more I'm doing on top of that, like naturally just like scaling the amount of work that I've done is like
Mhm.
it's a real eye-opener to how much you sort of take for granted and you don't assume is like, talent or whatever. Like you just assume it's just something you do, and it's not. It's like a good indicator of what you need to be, really.
Yeah, yeah, it can be hard to see like how much you've achieved when it's just all by day.
Yeah, exactly. Like I still think about it and I'm like, I feel like I'm doing the same thing, but it takes a sort of like reality check. And like I'm lucky in that there are people also in the company who will give me that reality check where they'll be like, actually, no, you've done this. And we have a good sort of open culture of like praising other people where praise is due. So that makes a big difference as well, for sure.
Sounds like such a lovely culture you've got at Juro, especially
It's
for
really
a
nice.
startup where they're very like intense and loads going on. So that's really nice that they're all supporting you.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Uh,
nice.
yeah, and then jumping into, I guess, what your current role looks like. What are your like main responsibilities now? And you mentioned OKRs. Like, do you have specific targets and goals that you've got to be meeting every quarter? And yeah, what do you do as a content editor now?
So we have like a main goal as like a marketing team, but then my personal goals for this quarter are across like content, but then also our community as well. So for example, I'm trying to think of my goals. So my goals this quarter would be like publish one piece of content which is sort of like community led. So from like our ideal customers who are lawyers at scale ups, gets interview some of them, or get something from them about their lives or like what they do at a scale up, and that's going to be your blog piece. You have to do one once a week. On top of that, there's guest posts, so to drive traffic to our site and like improve SEO. um, it's like post so and so number of guest posts a week. Then there's community, so there's grow our community membership by like 200, so add 200 more members to community. And then there's events for the community, so it's like look at what lawyers want to learn about and like what they want to hear about, and like come up with, I think we have 6 events we have to do in this quarter. And then there's uh, big rocks, so like big pieces of content that we launch, so ebooks and like publications and things like that. I have to do 2 of those in the quarter. um there's more. That's all I can remember for now, but yeah, basically I think since becoming a content writer, it's like the same kind of work but just more of it, essentially, and like taking a more ownership of like the whole process, I guess.
And you've got the same amount of hours in your week, and before you were writing. How are you managing to, like, that's a lot of content and the community stuff that you're squeezing into one quarter. How are you juggling all of those things? And do you have like writers that you can use beyond just you writing at this point?
So we're using writers for some of the SEO led work that we're doing on our blog. But if it's like external posting or ghost writing or interviews with lawyers or anything like that, I'm still responsible for writing that. And how am I organizing it? There's a lot of just honestly, I couldn't tell you. There's one of the things which my manager's been very adamant on this quarter is our ability to say no to things as much as we say yes to things. And it's so important. And I'm really glad he's always there to make sure I'm like not taking on work that I shouldn't be focusing on. And it's really, really difficult just for me to say no. But it's also so important because it means every day I know exactly what I need to be able to do, and I know exactly where my focus should be. That and sort of like blocking out time in calendars and just sort of making sure no one disturbs me while I'm just like, writing 3 blog posts a day or something.
And how do you say no, and how do you decide what you say no to if there's like requests coming from all over the place? What's your process when they will come through?
I guess if it doesn't directly align with my goals or like with the marketing team's goal, then it's something I say no to. And it's sometimes to me it's clear. Like sometimes it's very clear what that thing should be. It'll be like, random speaking event for something that we haven't heard of, for example, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to do all the work and getting all the materials together for that, and like coming up with like a talk and like sorting out socials and everything for that. Is it really worth it? And like you kind of have to gauge whether it is or not to you. But I think I still find that tricky sometimes. Like I think that also just ties back to me not being able to say no to much, where I'm just like, okay, yes, I'll help you, I'll do this, I'll do that. I definitely feel comfortable enough to ask if that's something I should be focusing on. And we have a lot of sort of calls every now and again, or even, we talk, my manager and we talk through Slack just to make sure we're sort of aligned on what we need to be doing in the week. So if at any point I'm doing something that shouldn't be done, he will know about it. he will be like, why are you doing this? It's taken a lot of practice to get to a point where I feel like I know exactly the kind of work I should be focusing on. Definitely.
Yeah. That's such an important skill, just that ability, especially as a content person, where it's hard to often communicate how big a workload is to the outsiders, so being able to say no.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a lot of like, oh, well, you just write, like,
Yeah.
not in our company, obviously, but like, I always feel like there's an expectation where it's like, oh, you just write a blog. What? That takes like 5 seconds. Like, why can't you help me out with my thing? And it's like, but there's a lot of work that goes into it, and you just have to, yeah, it's really tricky saying no, but you just have to when you have that much work to do, and when we have like such aggressive goals as well that we have to hit. So yeah,
definitely a good skill.
yeah.
And I know what you mean about people thinking it just takes half an hour to write, and they're like, oh, what research time? Like, that must take 5 minutes. Editing, it takes 2 minutes.
I've definitely had that in my family, like for sure. There's like family or friends where it's just like, but that's not really work, is it? Like you're just like messing around on a laptop, and I'm like, no, it's not messing around on a laptop.
By the way,
sorry, did you have a lot of writing experience before? So it was like with all the content you have to produce, do you sometimes find you come across writing blocks, or does it just come naturally to you now in terms of the amount of content you have to create?
I definitely get writing blocks, and I think that's part of the job. I think, like, especially when you have to be creative, like I don't think you can force that creativity, and every now and again I do get writing blocks. I have been writing for a while, but it's never been like the sole focus of my job. Like this is the first role where I've, had writer in my job title, and I've been focused on the writing, whereas before it was always like an addition to the main work I was doing, if that makes sense.
So how many a week is it that you're like things you're actually writing?
How many things a week I'm writing?
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me think. So if we have a big project which I'm working on, then it'll be a case of interviewing like a thought leader and then writing, like ghost writing a piece for them. I'll also try and be doing like I'll also try to do like 2 guest posts maybe a week. one blog post, and then like I don't know, and then obviously there's like community stuff as well. So the community newsletter goes out every week, so that's you know, a weekly thing. And then the the company newsletter goes out every 2 weeks. So 1 week I have like just relax, and the other week I'm like I need to find stuff to put in here. So yeah, I guess it varies a lot. Yeah.
And the audience that you're writing for, they're quite a niche specialist audience, aren't they? It's lawyers.
So niche.
So how, yeah, how do you go about creating content for just a very specific audience that is very research heavy, I guess?
And yeah, I think you're right. It is really niche. And the other thing to note is that I have like, so I'm writing for lawyers and I have no legal experience whatsoever. So there's always an element of like, oh God, am I saying something completely sort of incorrect, or is it like, you know, accurate to what? And you know, lawyers are going to be very, they're very knowledgeable, and they know when something you say is inaccurate, if that makes sense. Like they will know. I think the thing which I've been doing since I've joined, and I will continue doing, because no amount of like research will, you know, bring me up to speed with someone who has a law degree and has been practicing, you know, the law for like, I don't know, like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years in some cases. I think it really helps to rely on them to provide that kind of knowledge. So when it comes to ghostwriting, I never sort of assume I know what they mean by something. Like when it comes to writing an ebook, say I have to write it about like being the first lawyer at like a startup company, I will go out and interview someone who is the first lawyer at a startup company, so I know what like what their experience is, and it's more a case of like writing based on their experience, like relying on other people to provide that insight, as opposed to me being like I know it all myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that must save a lot of heavy researching time. And a question on that, you said you go and contact people. How do you go about getting hold of the people that you want to speak to?
I think I'm really lucky in the sense that my manager and my CEO both have they both have like a really huge network of lawyers who they can turn to whenever we need someone to like provide that kind of insight, or whether we want someone on a blog, they can suggest people who have done something you know, relevant. So for example, if I want to write a blog about like someone who's about a lawyer who's like doing a funding round, like they'll be able to turn to me and be like, oh, so and so has that experience, you should try reaching out to them, you can CC us, or we can do that intro for you. And I think that really helps, because otherwise it's very difficult to sort of go out of the blue with no sort of network behind you and try and make those connections. I think it really helps.
Yeah, that's a good tip, kind of going through the intro route.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone, Sophie, Juanita, Champarani, if you have any questions, to just do jump in.
So it's part of your role, Sanaa, to oversee the content written by other people as well, produced by other people. So does it have to go through you for a final check before it's published, or
no, so my manager deals with any of the freelance writers that we hire for like SEO articles and everything. Every now and again, I also sort of look through and just sort of make sure that, you know, their work is okay, but it's not my main focus. No, I imagine as we continue growing and like hiring more people into the content team, but then also you know, working with more freelancers, that may change, but right now it's not my focus. No.
And I have a general question. So if somebody listening right now is content writer level and they have a plan for like 6 months to get promoted into content editor, what three or however many, what things would you advise that they do to prepare?
I think I missed the end of that, sorry. I just lagged.
What would you like? So yeah, they want to, in 6 months, they'd love to go to content editor. What do you suggest their action plan to be in order to have the best chance of getting promoted?
So I would say like take more ownership of the projects that you do. So one of the big differences between the work I was doing then and the work I'm doing now is the decision-making ability that I've now had to sort of build up. And especially when it comes to, for example, like going back to the big projects that we do. So for an ebook, I would initially, as a content writer, just be responsible for writing a chapter or two. And now it's more a case of coming up with the ideas, finding the authors, like, interviewing, writing, editing, like putting through design, like coming up. So basically the whole process end to end is now more of my responsibility, and I've taken more ownership of it. And with that obviously comes all the decisions that you have to make when you're trying to do that. So I would definitely say like taking more ownership of your work plays a big role. Also, like I said before about like training and like upskilling, I think generally just sort of being curious and being aware of what you're good at and what you need to get better at is so important, because it'll help you sort of, in your career as a writer, like beyond the company where you work, but like also when you're trying to look for a promotion as well, being proactive about asking for help and like asking for training and upskilling in your weaker areas is very important. And I guess that ties into like just being curious as well, like just asking questions when you have questions, like reaching out to other people in the team and seeing how they're working, like going on calls that may not even have like a direct impact on your work, but may help you learn more about the product and your customers and what what your company is doing, what your team is doing, what other teams are doing. Like just sort of getting more of that knowledge generally is like a big I'd say it's really important as well.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Just get a 360 in-depth understanding of the company you're at.
Yeah, and that's like ongoing as well. Like you can never just sort of be like, right, I now know everything. Like it's definitely an ongoing thing, but I definitely think it helps a lot, especially like when you asked about Shumpana, you asked about like writer's block and things like that. Like these kind of things help as well, like being able to talk to other people in the team, or like listen to what's going on in the business and coming up with ideas based on that as well. Like it's a good way to sort of come up with more ideas for content.
Does anyone have any final questions for Sanaa?
I had a quick question based on like the ghostwriting aspect that you do. So I work in an agency and I don't feel like there is like the opportunity to progress in content where I currently work. I do writing for various clients on their websites, but obviously it's ghostwriting, so they don't even want people to know they have an agency working for them. So how would I realistically say that I've done this writing in terms of portfolio work? Would I just say that this is writing that I've done, but not be able to actually prove it? Like, how would I present the writing that I've done as a ghostwriter?
Yeah, I think I had the exact same concern. Like a few weeks ago, I was talking to my mentor and I was asking her the exact same thing about like, as a ghostwriter, how do you promote your work when you can't put your name to it? And the advice I got was like, a lot of people in these industries know that like a lot of the work is being ghostwritten. Like you can't, a lot of people know about it, and so it's not like you have to kind of constantly go out of your way to try and prove it. Like you can just say, you know, I ghostwrote this piece and have that in your portfolio, and it shouldn't really impact how you progress, or like how, you know, future sort of employers see you or anything. I mean, I've done most of my ghostwriting at this job, so like I'll see if that's true or not when I actually look at like moving around. But it does make sense. Like a lot of people ghostwrite, so I can imagine it's not a case of being like, yeah, well, just because your name isn't on this, you know, it doesn't belong to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool, thank you.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions from my end. Was there any other parting words of advice you want to share, Sanaa, at all? Or any other questions?
I don't know if I have any words of advice to impart on anyone at this point, but you know.
Are there any parts of your new role you find challenging, and if so, I mean, how do you get around that? So something that you didn't do in your previous role.
So like the event planning, event management and coordination, like all of that is something which I never had to deal with before. And it's challenging, but I enjoy it. And I think it's just a case of sort of like, I guess practice makes perfect. Like, I hate saying practice makes perfect, but it's
Absolutely.
The more I do, the better I'll get at it. And in the beginning, it will be challenging, but everything I've sort of started off as was challenging. Like in the beginning, I found, you know, writing blog posts for lawyers challenging. In the beginning, I found ebooks challenging, and now I'm doing all of that without thinking about it. So it's just a case of sort of, you know, going at it as much as I can and getting feedback where I can, and that's it really. That aside, I think just like the general amount of work that I have to do is quite a challenge. It's a leap, but yeah, again, that's just good planning, being able to say no to stuff, and blocking out my calendar and being like, do not disturb me during this time, like sort of helps out with that a lot.
Sounds good. And you said you had quite a supportive environment in terms of feedback, so you have regular one-to-ones and quarterlies, etc. And so in terms of writing feedback, how does the process work at Juro? So do you just have regular review stages for each piece of content?
So usually I'll draft something, and after I feel like it's, you know, at the best quality that I can get it to, I send it to my manager. And the feedback, feedback comes in like various forms. So it's either, you know, depending on the work, he'll edit it slightly and be like, okay, good, you can send this to the lawyer who needs to approve it, because it's like, you know, I've ghostwritten it from them, or you can send it to the blog who's going to publish it, whatever. And I'll look at like track changes and see how much he's changed and what he's had to edit. That's like the absolute sort of basics of it. But then, you know, if I feel like something is, if I feel like I've written something and I'm just not confident with it, or I've really struggled to write it, then sometimes we jump on a call and we go through it together. And, you know, they'll be like, he'll explain what I've done wrong, or like how I could improve certain aspects of my writing. And sometimes it's a case of, you know, if we're both really, really busy, I'll send him some work and be like, just comment on everything. Like, don't edit things, just go nuts with comments, like tear it apart. Yeah. Don't hold back. Like, and he will, and it'll be like very you know, very informative, I guess. Like it's very good to see how he reads my work and how how I can improve. And usually I end up just saving those pieces so I can go back to them and be like, okay, you do this a lot, do not do this again. Like, so yeah, I guess feedback comes in like various forms, and it's all just like super useful. I think just asking for feedback whenever you can is
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah.
That's such a good attitude of just like, yeah, please rip it apart, just go for it.
Yeah. Yes, it's a very painful but effective method.
Yeah.
Where you get it back and there's like full of comments and you're like, oh, okay, cool, that's fine, I'm fine.
But do you keep track of the success of all of your content, sort of like for future reference, if you want to get promoted again, or you need to make a case to show what you did? Are you sort of preemptively tracking what you're doing with all your content?
I think so. We track a lot of our content as is. I think if I were to ask for this promotion, like going back, if I was if I, were approaching this differently and was going to ask for this promotion myself, it would be I would know where to turn, and I would know which content has been the most successful because we track all of it. So I know how many downloads I get on like a gated piece of work, or like, how so and so blog post has improved our search ranking, and like, so I can kind of pinpoint it, and I probably would if I was making a case for myself, yeah. But this, obviously, it was kind of different. Like, I wasn't out asking as much as it was a case of developing me to a point where it was like, okay, now you can have promotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Any more? No, I think that's all questions. Thank you very much, Sanaa.
Thank you, Sanaa.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I hope that was somewhat helpful.
Yeah, it's a very detailed 360 view into the world. Brilliant. Thank you.
Good, I'm glad.
This is being recorded, so it'll be added to the Learning Hub next week if you want to relook at anything from there.
Great, thanks, Christina. Thanks, Sanaa.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
And you enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.